Hello there, dear listeners. Before we get to the episode today, we want to take a moment to talk about the June 24th Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. This decision stripped away the right and access to safe and legal abortions in many states. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans, and they're already talking about using this decision to attack other rights as well. To learn more about what you can do to help, go to choice.crd.co. We encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word. And now, back to your regularly scheduled idiocy.
Welcome to Two Idiots and a Dog, Idiots Unleashed.
It's time to feel the rage.
No gay pride, only queer wrath.
Sorry, Film Rage.
Sorry. I'm Grimm.
I'm Zolgar.
And just a quick warning, this is an uncensored podcast, so you may hear adult language or other content not suited for children, the workplace, church, human consumption, or, well, frankly, even non-human consumption.
Yeah, do not feed this podcast to your dog.
Speaking of dogs, Kaiju's around here somewhere, but as is usually the case for these episodes, she's not here to supervise us, so...
We can say fuck all we want. This week, our topic is queer representation in media. This was actually my idea. That's 2 in a row. But we weren't originally going to do this. We had our poll on Discord and got... What was it going to be? I don't remember what it was going to be. But that'll be in 2 weeks from now. But then I was like, we should do something for Pride. So let's do a queer episode. And then Discord agreed with me.
So here we are, being all queer during Pride Month.
Because, we are queer. If you hadn't figured that out by now, are you paying attention?
I am so queer.
I'm just a little queer.
Yeah, but I make up for it by being like 98% queer by volume.
You are pretty large, so that is a lot of queer.
There's a lot of queer going on over here.
So if you have an idea for a topic for us, you can let us know on our Discord or social media. But you can only vote in the topic poll on Discord. Now stand back.
Because the idiots are about to be unleashed. So, queer rep media. This is quite the topic. We could probably sit here for hours, plural. So, let's set some expectations before we get started.
So, first thing, I don't want to make this a highly negative episode, which is going to be hard because there is a lot of stuff out there that represents queer culture and individuals really, 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 really badly, especially older stuff.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of treat this like an Idiots on Film in that we're going to do all the bad stuff up front. We're going to get it out of the way.
So we're going to start out just by talking about some of the tropes that are the tropes that are problems with queer representation in media.
And then we're also going to talk about some of the good representation that's out there. So there's going to be... We're going to front load the bad like we usually do. Just get it done, get it out of the way. Then we're going to talk about a little bit more about some of the good things that have happened and just some of the things we've noticed, maybe trends and other things that have happened and how we've progressed and maybe a little bit of spanking the fandom a little bit because some of you are entitled.
Yeah, a little bit.
But mostly we're going to be focusing on the media itself. But when it comes to things like queer rep, and you can't leave the fandom out.
Yeah, definitely not.
So we're gonna kind of do a twofer here because we're gonna talk about these tropes kind of interchangeably, not interchangeably, but interwovenly, because you see them a lot. In fact, we've seen them in a couple of different properties now together. Which is weird, considering what they are.
Well, let's see. I think one of the most well-known and honestly worst tropes for it is bury your gays.
For those that don't know, Bury Your Gaze is where the gay character is the one that bites it.
Yeah. It's way overused, and in fact, for a while, it was almost required if there was a gay character, they had to die.
Mm-hmm. That dates back to literary rules and social norms from, like, way back in, like, the 30s, I think, all the way up through the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, and it has been so prevalent that it's lasted into, like, recent history.
It's still happening. It's still happening in properties. In fact, it recently happened in the ending of a long-running property. And we'll get to that in a moment.
I mean, I think one of the most famous examples of Bury Your Gaze, at least for nerd culture, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep. Willow's girlfriend, Tara, wasn't even the target of the attack, took a stray bullet, completely nonsensical, random death. And while it did give us one of the coolest arcs ever, in my opinion, which was Willow just losing her shit.
Yeah, Dark Willow was an amazing arc, though.
And may have contributed to my sexual awakening, not going to lie.
And now I do want to make sure we express this because we're talking about Buffy for a moment.
Fuck Joss Whedon!
Yeah, Joss Whedon is a problem.
I mean, don't actually fuck Joss Whedon, but fuck Joss Whedon.
Yeah, we like most of his media, but we don't like him.
And if for some reason, Joss, you're listening to this, I have one thing to say to you.
Fuck you.
You were the chosen one! And also fuck you, so I guess two things.
You were 90s woke, and you're still 90s woke.
Alright.
God, dog, you're too cute.
She is. And the other trope that tends to be interwoven with this, not always, but more often enough that it's really weird that it is, considering what it is, that it would be queer baiting. So, before we start getting comments or tweets or whatever the hell the kids are doing these days to yell at content creators, in my day we just wrote angry emails.
You are welcome to write us angry emails, tweets, or whatever, though. We like that.
You got a mouse in your pocket over there?
No, Kaiju enjoys it too.
Oh, I didn't realize Kaiju was a masochist. Learn new things every day. So, the actual definition of queerbaiting is when a show, over a usually a long-running show, really sets up the relationship between two characters to where it is so much more than just simple platonic friendship. And deliberately keeps that going to keep the audience interested, but very deliberately never actually lets a romantic or intimate relationship form.
Yeah, and we see this a lot. And we also do see this with heterosexual couples or heterosexual pairs that people want to become couples. But typically when that happens, it is a will they, won't they, and eventually they do. But typically with queer baiting, it's will they, won't they, and then they don't.
Yeah, it's you've got two characters of the same sex looking at each other with what I refer to as fuck me eyes.
Looking at each other the way Kaiju looks at a cookie.
Yep. Very, very intently.
I want it in my mouth right now.
That's what he said? So, these aren't always interwoven together, but they're interwoven together enough to make it weird. Because how could they be interwoven together? Because queer baiting is, they're never actually shown to be queer. But Bury Your Gaze, they kill the gay character. How can these be put together so frequently? Well,
one of them comes out and then gets killed.
So we just like to take a moment to give props to Supernatural for the fastest fucking speedrun of Bury Your Gaze I have ever goddamn seen.
And also, the car goes to heaven and Cass doesn't. What the fuck, Supernatural?
All I know is, you're all going to turbo hell.
I was watching Supernatural. I watched up to season 13 of it. I enjoyed it. When I heard how season 15 ended, I didn't even bother with 14. I was done.
Yeah.
And that was not the first time Supernatural decided to pull Kill Your Gaze.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bury Your Gaze, sorry.
Bring out your gaze. Dong, 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 dong. Bring out your gaze.
Because, what was she, about season 7?
Something like that, yeah.
We had Felicia Day as Charlie, who was a great character. I would have loved to have seen her be a more major part of the show. And they kill her off in less than an entire season, I think.
I generally don't remember. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I stopped watching around the time Dean became a demon.
Which time?
He did it more than once? Oh, God.
Or maybe. I don't know. But
I don't know.
We're about to start ranting about Supernatural more.
Yeah, so we're just gonna... That was just a quick example and reference of some of what we're talking about. There's still a couple of other things. We're going to talk about queer coding a little bit, which is definitely... Queer coding is a two-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. I've seen it used for good, but more often than not, it's been used for evil. Literally.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time...
Most of our villains... Or I should say, most of our queer-coded characters have been villains. And sometimes that's used for comedic effect, and in a vacuum, those characters are fine, but nothing exists in a vacuum.
Yeah. So, they made all the evil characters, the queer-coded characters, and then they can't figure out why all the gays are hot for goth chicks and guys and stuff.
Yeah, well, because, like, you look at how many characters, you know, there's been a couple of James Bond villains that were heavily queer-coded. I want to say the villain in Skyfall, but it was I know one of the Daniel Craig ones was so queer-coded that it's like...
I mean, there's a scene where he's, like, actually feeling up Bond, and... But, to their credit, he makes some offhand remark about it being Bond's first time, and Bond immediately snarks back with, "What makes you think it's my first time?" So, props to them for not just hanging that completely on the villain.
Yeah.
I will give them that much.
And, I mean, honestly, you cannot mean to tell me that James Bond
has absolutely stopped a dude in order to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I would say James Bond is at least a little bi.
I think it's required to be a spy, to be perfectly honest.
Probably.
If it isn't, it should be. I mean, you're already a spy. You're already swinging both ways. There we go. There's a new show idea. Spy. SBI. Or SBY. SBI? SBI. I like SBI better. Yeah. Networks, call us. We have a whole bunch of terrible ideas like this.
Well, except the networks won't do it because... No, actually they would as long as it was a woman. Because women in media can be bisexual, but men in media can't be bisexual. Oh, hey, look, there's another trope.
Yeah.
It's only been in, the last couple of years that we can get openly gay men in mainstream media.
To the point where this segues into another trope that's become a fucking gag at this point. The first openly gay character! How many first openly gays has Disney had now?
Basically one every movie.
Oh, God. Just stop.
Yeah. But, back onto what I've commented about bisexual men versus bisexual women. It's like, media has been a lot more accepting of two women kissing on television for a lot longer than it's been about men kissing on television.
Well, I mean, let's take another look at Buffy. Willow figured out that she was a lesbian. And after that point, exclusively dated women. I can't think of a single male gay character from the entire show. Angel had a couple that were gay-coded. Lauren, the voice, the lounge singing demon, was definitely gay-coded. I don't think he was actually gay, though. I can't think of a single character.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched Angel or Buffy, so...
I'm not going to say that character doesn't exist. I'm just saying I can't think of him.
Yeah. And now I do think that from what I remember, I don't think it was explicitly stated, but it was very possible that Lauren was bi. But we never see him intimate with someone, as I recall, so...
Yeah, he's just really flirty. Which might have been he was just really flirty, or it might have been he was bi. Either way, he was definitely a queer-coded character that we never really got confirmation on.
Yeah. And a couple others that you have that with. Bashir and Garak from Deep Space Nine.
Bashir and Garak were so heavily queer-coded together. Years later, the voice actors themselves got together and read slash fiction of their characters together.
They weren't voice actors, dude. They were real actors. Which is not to say voice actors aren't actually actors themselves.
Well, when you're reading a script into a microphone, at that point you're a voice actor. So when they were doing the bit together, I was considering them voice actors.
Yeah, well, your face.
Yeah, well, your mom's face.
Now, interestingly, Deep Space Nine, I do believe, was the first Star Trek, though, to have a same-sex kiss.
I think you're right. And they had to fight long and hard for it.
Giggity.
Because fuck Rick Berman.
And also, that same-sex kiss was between Jadzia Dax and the lover of a male former host.
Yeah.
So, I mean... The whole Dax symbiote, the whole Trill symbiote thing kind of throws gender out the window a little bit.
And yet we also get one of the best trans acceptance moments in media from that same show and that same character. There's a point where Jadzia...
Curzon, my old friend!
It's Jadzia now, as they're actively hugging.
Jadzia, my old friend!
Just instantly switches names. No problem whatsoever. And this is from a Klingon.
Yeah, because if you are not enough of a Trekkie to know what we're talking about, the Trill are a species that they have nigh immortal symbiotes that live inside a humanoid host. And the humanoid hosts, they age and die like people. But the symbiote carries the memories, and there's a different personality with every host as they merge with all these ancient memories, kind of like the Avatar.
And that's actually where their full names come from. Jadzia Dax. Jadzia is the host. Dax is the symbiote.
Yeah, which is why it was Curzon Dax, and then Jadzia Dax, and then Ezri Dax.
Yeah. And to us, it sounded like a family name, but no, it's the symbiote.
Yeah.
It's just the symbiote continuing. And it's really interesting because when you get your new host going, we're getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but I'm going to wrap this up in a moment. But when you get your new host going, they are in an amalgam of the two, and there's a period where, if I remember, I think we actually saw this with Ezri in like real time, where they were like trying to find their equilibrium a little bit.
Yeah, we could do an entire episode just talking about Star Trek races, and maybe we should do that at some point.
At some point, we probably will. But it makes for a really great retroactive trans allegory.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was intended that way at the time. It was the 90s. Who knows? No one involved in writing any of that is going to say as much. Especially if they're still working with that production company.
Alright, so let's see. We have queer coding.
Queer baiting. Barrier
gaze.
Women can be bi, men can't. Honestly, just gay men in general are underrepresented until very recently.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other... I know there's a couple other negative stereotypes, or negative tropes.
Yeah, the problem is, when it comes to negative tropes, honestly, we could sit here all night just digging them up and talking about them.
Yeah.
And honestly, we did say we didn't want to make this negative.
I think I want to bring up one more semi-negative trope.
Yeah, if you've got one loaded and ready to go ahead.
And this one is one that's not... It's not always bad. It's kind of like queer coding. It's not always bad, but how often is the gay character the comic relief?
A lot. And that's usually the sassy gay friend flavor.
Yeah. And, there's nothing wrong with with your gay character being funny. I mean, there are plenty of hilarious gay people out there. But when every single time you have your gay character being also the comic relief, it's right up there with having your comic relief character being the black character or anything like that.
These things don't exist in a vacuum. And I know that can make writing it hard, but that's how it goes.
I think that would be a good time, though, to talk about some of the shows that have done it well.
Obviously, there's one that's really popular right now. Now, full disclosure, I have not seen it yet.
I was actually going to save that show for last because I wanted to go the whole time without mentioning it, but we'll go ahead and go. Unless you want to edit this.
No, I'm not going to edit this, and because... I want to point out something. I don't care anymore if the show is good. My social media feeds are nothing but this show, and I swear to God, if I see one more fucking gay pirate...
Now, but that being said, Our Flag Means Death. Like I said, I actually wanted to leave this one to last, because I wanted to get people sitting there going, why are you saying Our Flag Means Death? Why aren't you saying this? But it is a great show, and it does a really good job of representing queer characters, almost entirely gay men.
And one non-binary.
Yeah, one non-binary. And that character, there's a great scene, what I think is actually the best trans acceptance scene I've ever seen in media. It's right up there with the Klingon scene. And so our non-binary character is assigned female at birth.
Mm-hmm.
And...
I don't know. Let's be fair here. Jim was assigned assassin at birth.
No. Jim was assigned female at birth and then became an assassin. But so they go back to the orphanage that they were raised in after their parents were killed. And the mother figure there greets Jim by their dead name, which I don't even remember at this point.
I don't know. I've absorbed what I know. I've absorbed through memes.
And Jim's just like, oh, it's Jim now. And it just, without missing a beat, welcome, Jim. Let's go get, basically, now
okay, Jim, let's go get some cake.
Yeah.
And of course, the friend that's there with Jim is just like, oh, yes, come in, Grammy, for this cake. Like, it everything I've heard, it is a good show. It's just, oh my God, it is nothing but gay pirates on all of my feeds.
Yeah. And also, if somehow you haven't heard, we're getting a season 2.
Yep. With some of the most on-point responses from the actors on social media. I think the most appropriate one, though, was Reese, who plays Steed. Huh? What? Oh, sorry. I was taking the kids to school. We got renewed? Oh. That's a fantastic thing to wake up to.
Yeah, like I say, it is a show that's done really well. Another one that's done really well is we're going to go back. We're going to get back on Star Trek here for a moment. Mm-hmm. Star Trek Discovery.
And before anybody in the comments or whatever the hell passes for comments on these, I don't know, he handles that shit, comes at us is all like, why is there so much Star Trek? Because Star Trek's been being fucking progressive since 1966.
Remember, the first interracial kiss on television was on Star Trek. And say what you will about William Shatner. He's an asshole. I will acknowledge that. But in this case, he used his asshole powers for good because they had a scene they had 2 versions of the scene where he kissed Uhura. And in one version, they were going to not show the kiss. They were just going to imply the kiss. And he intentionally fucked up that scene every single take so they could not use it.
Yep.
Like I say, he's an asshole, but that time he used his asshole powers for good.
Yep.
And there have been so many other places where Star Trek has been progressive. In fact, before I get into Discovery, do you remember the non-binary species in Next Generation that Riker falls in love with? One who doesn't want to be non-binary.
Yep.
Who felt female. And
Yep.
the thing was, Riker was in love with her as who she was, regardless of what gender she identified as or lack thereof.
And true to a lot of the attitudes of the day, and honestly, some attitudes from certain people today, that episode ends on just a heartbreaking moment where she succumbs. She buries herself under societal expectation.
And lets herself get conditioned to go back to being them. To being non-binary. To not being true to herself. And it's heartbreaking.
It hurts. I mean, I am genderqueer. I'm still wrestling with that. Our country, our society, our culture is built around so many different levels of gatekeeping on gender identity and orientation. And we've gotten so much better in a lot of areas. Don't get me wrong. And media has absolutely paved the way for that. I mean, I want to point out, this episode of Star Trek The Next Generation was early 90s.
Yeah, this was like, what, season 3, maybe?
Maybe season 3. I think it might have even been earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, young me, the first time I saw it, I didn't get it. When I watched it again, being so much more aware, God, it hit so hard.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's coming from someone who is fairly comfortable in their gender.
I'll be honest, I haven't made it back to that episode. And I don't know if I can do that episode anymore.
And also, props to Jonathan Frakes for that episode, because Riker was crushed.
Oh, you could not have hurt him more if you had shot him in the heart.
And I mean,
And Frakes sold that shit.
Yeah, and especially because this is William Riker, the playboy of the ship. And, so you're thinking, he's the one that falls in love with this non-binary character. It's just...
Yeah. And there have been other trendsetters, others that paved the way. Maybe the rep wasn't always good, but it still paved the way. Will and Grace. I never watched it. It wasn't my flavor of show, but...
My mom watched it a lot, so I ended up watching it sometimes, and...
It wasn't always good.
Especially by today's standards.
But there were so many people who watched that show and saw themselves for the first time on TV.
Yeah. There have been some great trendsetters, and that has opened up... There's an old saying, what we allow in moderation, our children will allow in excess. And so often that's used for kind of negative things like, oh, well, you swear in moderation, so your kids are going to swear in excess. And, well, that's kind of true. But in the case of queer representation in media, what was pushing the envelope so much 20, 30 years ago is perfectly accepted now. Well, not perfectly, because...
Well, there's a setup if ever I've heard one. I guess it's time to finally spank the fandom. Okay, so we're going to preface this by stating fandoms are an important, vital ecosystem surrounding media. I mean, we exist because of fandom. This podcast exists because of fandom.
Yeah, well, neither of us are really neither of us are like a super fan of insert media here. We're broader fans.
Yeah, we're broader fans, but there are these fandom ecosystems, and we are in multiples of those ecosystems, so we can see some of the trends, we can see some of what's going on, and
why you gotta make everyone gay?
well, that one is annoying as hell, because it's just wholly inaccurate. I mean, queer rep was so sought after for so long that we would see ourselves wherever we could get away with. We were starved for it, and now we're finally getting some good stuff. But there's another sub-element of the fandom that I really need to address here because, well, it's my fucking soapbox, and I'm gonna get on it. This is our podcast. I'll rant if I want to.
It's my soapbox, and I want to rant! Sorry, J.G. Wentworth.
I am legally obligated to say that I'm sorry so that you won't sue us. And I've seen this happen time and time again, and it's always, well, it's not always, but it's usually the younger fans. And so, of course, I preface this by stating the younger fans are younger fans. They don't know where we came from. They weren't there. We can look at them and go, well, it was like this all we want, but they weren't there. We can explain it to them. They can, on an intellectual level, understand it. But that first-hand experience of being there when these media events happened, and what kind of media events am I talking about? Okay. We're going to take a brief little foray into animation. And there's a particularly infamous moment in animated fandom history that I have seen a lot of younger fans decry these days. But when it happened, we lost our shit.
Korra?
Holding Asami's hand. And to be clear, if you have consumed media at all in like the last 10 years, you're looking at us right now and going, oh, they held hands, so fucking what?
But when Korra, they fought tooth and nail to get any amount of queer representation in Korra. They tried and fought, and Nickelodeon kept being like, no. And finally, they got that little tiny sliver of a hint.
And for just a moment, the queer fans felt seen. And this was groundbreaking. That's the sad part. Two characters of the same gender holding hands in the finale of a show was groundbreaking. So we're going to move on to another animated show that took that goalpost, moved it a little further, and then plowed straight into it, full tilt, and kept doing it over and over and over again. And they paid a price.
Steven Universe?
Steven Universe.
Which I've never watched, personally.
I've seen a couple of seasons of it. I really enjoy it. I need to get back to it at some point. But the gems themselves are femme-presenting, but are, in fact, non-binary. Full up. And I mean, they're literally gems. They're magic rocks that project a humanoid form. And there's one of them, Garnet, who is actually comprised of two others. Garnet is a fusion of Ruby and Sapphire. And the various bits of representation throughout the course of the series was very small, little bits here, little bits there, because every time Rebecca Sugar would do something, the studio would come in and be like, "Stop making it gay!" And she's like, "Sorry, studio, won't happen again." And they would leave, and then she'd turn to the crew and be like, "Make it gayer." And this finally culminated in Ruby and Sapphire getting married. This was earth-shattering at the time.
Yeah, because they're stoned. It was earth-shattering.
Get out. And it was understated. It was a whole episode, but it was an understated wedding. There was a lot of tiptoeing around terminology instead of just using terminology because the eye of Sauron was upon them. And by the way, we're pretty sure this episode is what got the show canceled. You'll never get that proven because the studio would never admit that. We're pretty sure it was at least a contributing factor to the show getting the axe. Because that show had a lot more stories to tell, and you could tell when it ended that they had more stories to tell. And that brings us to one that I haven't seen any of, but I keep hearing about, and that's Owl House.
I also know nothing about Owl House, so...
But what I have heard is that, there's a lot of queer fans who are very happy with it because there is I believe there's a queer couple that actually refers to each other as a couple, which is great. I'm certainly not going to be shitting on Owl House for that because, by God, it's overdue. What I am going to do, though, is bring you young'uns to task for just a moment because I have seen way too many of you coming down hard on Avatar and Steven Universe and the shows that came before it and the shows that came between it. And I understand where you're coming from. You weren't there. And it should be such a simple thing for a female character on screen to look at another female character on screen. Oh, that's my girlfriend. That's my wife. Hi, honey. And then they just share a quick smooch like every het couple you've ever seen on a show. I agree with you in the fact that that should be the norm. But for so long it wasn't. You need to learn your history. And that's what these old shows kind of are a little bit. They're a record of our history, the limited queer rep that we've got, and these few shining nuggets scattered here and there. That's kind of our historical record, because guess what? We don't got one.
Yeah, that's actually something for literally the entirety of not just queer media, but queer culture in general. I was actually reading something earlier talking about the AIDS epidemic, and
so many of our elder queers are just gone.
And it's like, you and I are in the age bracket that we might have known somebody, but, we're just young enough that we missed the worst of it. And especially me, because I didn't even really realize I was queer until, I was 30-something. But you get, either someone who realized they were queer very young, or people, mid-40s and up,
mm-hmm.
and so many of them lost so many people.
I have a few people I know who are older than me and queer, and who have come from queer parents. We have a mutual friend. Hi, DB. But the fact of the matter is, the depressing fact is, there is a major subset of younger queer people to whom we are the elder gays. And that thought is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
We don't have a history. So again, young people, I am urging you to please refocus your perspective on these older shows, these older properties. They walked so current media could run.
Yeah, and also it's important to know that you don't have to like some of these older pieces.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up one that's very controversial to bring up.
Yeah, before you do, I just want to double down on what you just said. You don't have to like these shows. Now, personally, I'm of the opinion that if you don't like Avatar, there's something wrong with you. But everybody has different tastes, so it's still okay to not like these properties. But you still have to respect the fact that they walked so that that cool, hip piece of media, so that our owl houses and our flags mean deaths can run and sprint and frolic and jump for joy and not just portray these queer characters and these queer relationships, but celebrate them. And with that in mind, you had a controversial one to bring up.
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
If I see one more fucking Tumblr post decrying Rocky Horror, I am going to smack some kids upside the head like Gibbs.
But it's horrible.
Oh. Yeah,
it
by
is,
modern standards, it's terrible.
And that's the thing. That's something that also... That's... Okay, for a moment I'm going to actually look at you, older queers. Loving Rocky Horror Picture Show is okay. That is what the older queers had. That is what you had.
I love Rocky Horror. As terrible as it is. But I love it.
While the younger queers need to accept that Rocky Horror Picture Show is an incredibly important piece of queer media. It really is. It is incredibly important. I cannot state that enough. But older queers, you need to accept that for the younger queers, it's fucking offensive!
That said, younger queers, you can chill a little bit. Okay, this is the terminology and identities and structure that we queers had when that was made. And you have... Nothing exists in a vacuum. You cannot remove it from the time it was made and hold it up. You can look at it through a modern lens and go, oh yeah, that is very problematic. But you also have to understand and respect what it was when it came out.
Yeah.
Am I saying that this should be blaring on every television? All Pride? Hell no.
I mean, hell, I've still never seen it, and
I still don't even know. I don't even know if any of the remakes have been touched up to be a little more palatable. I haven't had the chance to see them. But I know that the original, I mean, everybody in it was great. Tim Curry was amazing.
Tim Curry's amazing in everything.
I mean, it's Tim Curry. And but it throws around some words, and I am going to say those words right now that are going to probably offend some of you, and I apologize for that, but these are the words that we had back then. And that is transvestite, transsexual. Now, these have fallen way out of favor. Transgender is the preferred word these days. But when Rocky Horror came out, those were the words they had, and so that's the words Rocky Horror used. And the portrayals and everything, yeah, by modern standards, are very problematic, for sure. But again, have to walk so that current media can run. I mean, God, when Rocky Horror came out, it was so flagrantly queer in a desert of queer rep. Like, there was nothing. I'm trying to think if there was even anything even remotely mainstream at the time that wasn't just rotting garbage for queer rep.
Probably not.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. Now, bearing in mind, I'm from the 80s, so, like, I don't necessarily know. I was a wee tadpole.
You know, we got off on a tangent because I actually was originally going to talk about Star Trek Discovery, and then we kind of started talking about older stuff because of Next Generation.
Yeah, we do that. That's why it's called Unleashed.
So back to the where this started.
So we've talked about the crawling and the walking. We're going to come back to the running.
Yeah. And Star Trek Discovery, they run. The ship's doctor, who is a major character, is an openly gay man who is an openly gay married man to one of the ship's engineers. And, not only do we see them together, but we see them together. We see them kiss. We see that they share quarters. We see that they share a bed. We see them being a couple who loves each other. And there's also, I think her name is Jet, Tig Notaro's character. Which, by the way, I love Tig Notaro. I want to see her in everything. Everything.
Yeah, I've got a bit on that, but I'll wait. I'll save it for after yours. After you talk about Discovery some more.
Tig Notaro's character is this amazing, sassy, queer genius. And what's interesting is, at first, you don't know she's queer. It's just kind of a casual line where she's talking to the engineer when he thinks he's losing his husband. There's some stuff going on there. I'm not going to go into detail because if you haven't watched it, it's well worth watching. But, he asks her if she's married, and, says that she was, but she lost her wife. And it's just this very casual line, and it was delivered so beautifully. I think there's a couple other characters in Discovery that are queer as well, but I haven't watched the most recent seasons. I think I've seen up through season 3.
Yeah, and we're starting to see this, what I call casual rep, a lot more in recent years, and I'm here for it. Brief side tangent before I get into the Tig Notaro thing. I've been playing a video game recently, Hard Space Shipbreaker. Great little title if you're into something a little more chill. Check it out. And one of the other characters, while you're having a private conversation with her, drops the fact that, she's talking about one of her exes and how they met. And amazing. And during the conversation, she just casually mentions, yeah, I saw this girl and she was amazing and she was beautiful and smart, and I finally talked to her and we hit it off and da-da-da-da-da. But she got this great opportunity, so I told her to go pursue it. But I always wonder how she's doing. And it's just the casual level of representing this female character talking wistfully about this ex-character of hers who is also a female. It was just such a casual, fluid, organic moment. There wasn't this big, I'm gay moment or anything like that. It was just, you're just talking and bullshitting and reminiscing and trying to find a human connection, because in Shipbreaker, you're in your own individual habitats. You only talk to people over the radio. You don't get together and hang out and have a beer after work. You return to your hab. I know, she's too far away.
Kaiju, I want to bat you.
But Kaiju has spurned you by being too far away.
Kaiju is a troll.
She is. She learned it from you. She learned it from watching you. Anyway, it's just this casual insertion in the otherwise fluid, organic conversation.
Insertion.
Fluid. Organic. Bless you, Kaiju. Kaiju is apparently allergic to us being 12.
Yeah.
So going back to Tig Notaro real quick. This is a little bit of a tangent. But I still want to bring it up because I find it fucking hilarious. So there was a movie that came out a while ago. Definitely not a movie for everybody.
So not for everybody.
But it was definitely in my wheelhouse. And that was Army of the Dead.
And that's the recent one, not the 1970s one, by the way.
Yeah. And originally there was a male comedian. I'm not even going to say his name because fuck that guy. And it came to light that he had done what, well, a whole lot of male comedians have done. Unfortunately. And they cut him from the production. And they video edited in Tig Notaro to take his place. And I personally think they should do that with all of the people who did what he did.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't even make sense for the plot of the film, I don't care. Tig Notaro is there.
We should replace every problematic actor with Tig Notaro.
I'm good with this.
Can we replace Amber Heard in Aquaman 2 with Tig Notaro?
Okay, but we also have to replace Johnny Depp in whatever Johnny Depp's in lately with Tig Notaro.
Would anyone actually notice?
Well, yeah.
Tig Notaro is actually funny.
And also, I don't know what was going on with Grindelwald there, but I saw pictures from set. Ugh. That's. So bearing in mind that I'm still on the fuck Harry Potter train. J.K. Rowling is a TERF and can eat shit.
Yeah. There's a reason we haven't done anything on Harry Potter in this podcast so far.
On this podcast, or Idiots on Film, for that matter.
But by this podcast, I mean in general our podcasting journey.
Yeah, if you're sitting here looking for some great, cool, hot take on anything from the wizarding world of Harry Potter, don't hold your breath.
Our hot take on the wizarding world of Harry Potter is, while the Harry Potter books were entertaining enough and the movies were okay, we refuse to give any kind of money or what's the word?
Recognition.
Recognition to any property that gives money to a TERF. Especially a TERF who uses her money and position to push her fucking agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just say something that some of y'all need to hear and some of you don't want to hear. And I've actually said it in private to some of our audience because I know a lot of our audience are our friends right now. But I'm going to say it here for the record. And it's going to be something you don't want to hear, but it's something I feel needs to be said and needs to be heard. Trans lives matter more than fucking Harry Potter.
And just to be clear, there is nothing wrong with still liking the stories.
We'll disagree on that.
No, I said still liking the stories. The stories have a lot of problems in them. A lot of problems. But when you continue to support the stories and promote the stories, that continues to support the agenda of somebody who wants people like Grimm gone. Don't get me wrong, I want Grimm gone, but not for that reason.
So yeah, kind of more of a negative note than we wanted to go for this late into the episode, but it needs to be said. It needs to be said because I know it needs to be said because I've had to keep saying it over and over again to people.
But hey, don't forget, Dumbledore was gay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that in regards to that specific thing that she has come out and said after the fact about her books, that one I actually believe that was intended because I saw it when I read the books. But that is...
But it definitely wasn't rep.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't even coding. Not really. It was like diet coding. Just 1 calorie.
But well, let's get back on track.
So there have been a lot of other properties. We've talked about, the big one that you wanted to end on. I'm sorry, but it was my opener because it's everywhere.
That was why ending on it would have been great.
You cannot escape Taika Waititi kissing a man.
Now, another one it's kind of a mixed bag on representation. And part of that is the era it takes place in. And I'm not going to go into too much detail for those of you who haven't watched it yet, but Stranger Things. Now, there's a lot of question about one of the original characters from the crew about his sexuality. There's a lot of suspicious of... A lot of people think that Will is being coded as gay. And I think there's been some news about that, but I haven't been keeping up. But there's also another character that we find out midway through season 3 that she's a lesbian. And she's still in the closet to most everybody in the show. I think as of where I've seen up to in season 4, because I'm not done with season 4, because Jesus fucking Christ, those episodes are long. But up to where I'm at in season 4, only one person knows she's gay. And there was just a moment of processing, and then he's just like, oh, okay, well, cool. And then starts giving her shit about her taste in women. Which, you know, that's what friends do. It's just like...
Listen, I give you shit about your taste in partners, but you don't have any.
You know, that's what happens when you're on the ace spectrum.
Neither taste nor partners.
Kaiju kill.
Yeah, Stranger Things I can't say anything about. I haven't watched it. I have started the first episode of season 1. The 80s slice of life high school drama is pulling me out of it. I know it. We get past that and it gets really good, but the high school drama shenanigans, unfortunately, is what's also pulling me out of Miss Marvel right now. By the way, Miss Marvel is good. I'm not dissing on either of these shows, but the slice of life high school strained relationship with your parents dynamic that occurs in both shows keeps pulling me out of it. And that's a me thing. I freely admit it. So I haven't seen Stranger Things, so I can't really comment on the things that Zolgar just brought up.
Yeah. So also, I did reach out to some of our fans on Twitter because, well, you know.
Wait, we have fans?
Like 5 of them.
How much do you pay them?
Kaiju pictures.
Yeah, okay, that'll do it.
But we got, I basically, because, I mean, audience interaction is great, and also, I don't consume all the media out there. Neither of us do. So, I kind of wanted to see what other people thought were some positive examples of queer representation. And we unfortunately only got 2 responses, but it was more than I was expecting. Well, I should rephrase. I asked for positive examples of queer representation in media that weren't our flag means death, because, well, otherwise it would just be
if
like...
I see one more fucking gay pirate, I swear to God!
And one person, that would be, or one group, or something, but WDRP, which is a...
Just get on with what they said.
So they brought up Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which, you know, that's that really stupid cop dramedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah, I remember now. That was a thing.
Yeah, and because
that was all the actress. She put in a lot of work for that.
You're forgetting something though. In Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the
captain,
the big burly black captain, was gay as fuck.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, he doesn't come across too burly, because there's a much burlier black man who sits at a desk outside his office.
True.
It's really hard to come across as a big burly black man when Terry Crews is there. But yeah, and the captain is great, and we started with that. Like, he was just, from inception, he was gay, and it was used to do some of the best comedic effect I've seen, because I've watched some of the early seasons a little bit. And, there's just one where, like, when they're talking about, you don't understand what Hard to Bid is like. I'm a gay black cop from the 80s. And just looks at him like he's stupid. Like...
Yeah, and this is one of those things where humor around a queer character is very different than a queer character being comic relief.
Yes.
Or making their queerness a joke. And that's one of the things that Brooklyn Nine-Nine didn't do, is it did not make Holt being gay the joke. It made humor around Holt being gay.
Yeah, and then we got, I think the character's name is Rosie?
Rosa.
We got Rosa coming out as bi, and then the actress backing that up with, yeah, I am, which, that was a big deal. And so, yeah, props to whoever the hell you said for bringing that up. WDRP, good catch. I completely forgot about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Shame on me.
And then there's also these other idiots that we interact with sometime. I don't know. Have you ever heard of them? Robots Don't Age?
I don't know. They sound like idiots.
Yeah, I mean, they probably have a really terrible podcast that you definitely shouldn't listen to.
Absolutely. We
Cody,
definitely didn't let them into our server or anything. Ugh.
Cody is going to stab me.
You're going to deserve it.
Yeah. But he brought up Schitt's Creek.
That's another one I haven't seen, but I've heard that there was some rep there.
Yeah, I haven't watched much of it. My mom was watching it recently, and I don't live with her anymore, but she was over watching it one time when I was over there, and there's definitely some representation, but I'm not really sure from what I have seen how well I can call it positive representation myself. Mm. Because what I have seen of it, the main character that I know is gay is not quite as over the top, hi, I'm gay, as Jack from Will and Grace, but he's like, okay, if Jack is an 11, he's like a 9.
Yeah. And there's some argument to be made for just having a character who's out there unapologetically existing as a gay person and embracing that in media. But I can't say for certain that's what that is because, again, I have not seen Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, and apparently there's actually another gay character in it, but, again, I haven't watched much of it,
yeah.
So I guess maybe I need to watch more of it, but I'm not really much of a kind of sitcom, dramedy type person because...
Yeah, they're very hit or miss for me. Very hit or miss. I need more. I just don't have the mental bandwidth for anything that doesn't include a lot of explosions.
Let's see.
Grimms are very simple creatures. We just like things go boom.
And now, of course, we've only been talking about TV shows and a little bit movies here. Mm-hmm. And there is so much else.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, just off the top of my head, let's take a sidestep into my arena of choice. Video games.
Who plays video games?
Me. I play video games.
Video games for idiots and children.
Which is why we both play them. I'm gonna paraphrase a line from a video game character, Tannis from Borderlands. Video games over sycophants and children.
What's a sycophant?
I'll tell you when you're older.
That's code for you don't know either?
I don't have the definition on hand. And if I try to explain it in that roundabout, weird way I explain words, someone will be like, actually...
Now, just because this is me, I'm sitting here with my laptop.
And you're pedantic.
Sycophant. A person who attempts to gain advantage by flattering influential people or behaving in a servile manner. Thank you, dictionary.com.
Behold the internet!
So hey, you learned something today. If you didn't already know what I meant.
We're sorry. We'll try to keep that to a minimum going forward. I apologize. But yeah, Stardew Valley. Cute little farming sim. Occasional forays into dungeon delving. Gay as hell. Slime Rancher.
Kinky.
Not that kind of slime ranching.
Aw, but I want to bang the slime people.
No.
Ah.
Not in this game. So Slime Rancher is a fun little ranchy, weird... It's an indie title. That should explain everything. But you ranch slimes, and you feed the slimes the correct foods, and they give you resources. Slime poop. That you turn around. They're called plorts. It's slime poop, okay? You are slinging slime poop to the cosmos.
Excuse me, I need to plorp.
Is it plorp or plort? I don't remember. Something like that, though. But yeah, it's slime poop. You're selling slime poop.
Slime poop.
But as you are exploring, you find little hollow messages left behind by the previous owner of the ranch. And she tells this long story about this person that she used to know and she was kind of into and everything. And I can't remember if it's her or the person she's sweet on, but one of them has a masculine name. And it's like the second to last or last message of hers that you find out that they are both female and that she left the ranch to go be with her. And I'm just, my gay little heart.
Gay.
I mean, there's lots of other gay moments, gay characters in games. Shout out to Guild Wars 2. Has a long-running, recurring gay couple, like canonical.
Borderlands 3.
Borderlands 3. Not only canonical gay couple... whole DLC dedicated to their gay fucking wedding. Hell yes. Now, Borderlands as a franchise and Gearbox as a company have some problems.
A little bit.
But seeing my boys gay, married, and happy brought a tear to my queer little eye. I'm actually legit tearing up thinking about it, to be honest, because... that's one of those franchises I've played since inception. And to see that character attain that was actually a big deal for me. I mean, oh God, there's so many games with varying degrees of queer representation.
Games.
What's up, gamers? That physically hurt me. I hope you understand.
And, of course, there's also... you've got a lot of that kind of subtle to overt queer representation in other games. I mean, you look at the Mass Effect games.
Yep.
But there's also, there's all of these visual novels and such. I mean, you cannot throw a stone on itch.io without hitting a dozen queer visual novels. Some of which are adult and some of which aren't.
Yeah, games, because it is by definition an interactive media, there is so much great room for exploring orientation and identity and all of these concepts in a safe virtual environment.
Yeah, and that's also the case with tabletop role-playing games. And, we've always been able to be gay in a tabletop role-playing game.
But oh my God, the current generation of D&D players looked at D&D and went, this is gay now.
And also, there's other games. If you're not familiar with this, do not judge it by the name. Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Judge it by the name. Because it's awesome!
I mean, when I first heard about it, when I first heard the name, I rolled my eyes and was like, "Oh God, this is going to be like some really horrible, not actual good representation shit." And then I looked into it, and it's like it is built by an almost entirely queer and mostly femme team.
Yeah,
and it's published by Evil Hat. I fucking love Evil Hat. I have both the
gamers. I'm going to hell for that joke.
I
hope you all appreciate it.
I have both the Thirsty Sword Lesbian books hardbound sitting on my game shelf right now because I collect RPGs.
The fact of the matter is, with Thirsty Sword Lesbians, they knew exactly who they were marketing to and how they needed to do it. But if you weren't adjacent to that demographic, it would be very easy to look at it and dismiss it. I am adjacent to that demographic, being genderqueer, pansexual, etc. And, but I'm not in that demographic. But it was still enough for me I have enough adjacency to be able to look over at that demographic and go, yeah, this is for them.
The thing is, it's actually not just for them.
Yeah.
It is. Look, the way it's set up.
I just meant the tone and the marketing.
Yeah, the tone of the marketing. Its overall tone of the marketing is heavily focused on people who want queer and sometimes romantic RPGs, which I'm not sure I'm ever actually going to get to play it because personally, I'm not a big fan of romance in my RPGs. If you are, great, amazing. I'm just it's hard for me, especially.
You can tell some amazing stories with it, but there are definitely those players that just take it a little far.
And honestly, one of the things that I run into personally is sometimes I have a bit of a hard time distinguishing between my character's emotional connection to their character and my emotional connection to them.
Yeah. And that's perfectly normal when it comes to role-playing because every character you make, you're putting a bit of yourself into, and sometimes you're putting a lot of yourself into that character. And there's times where in a given emotional moment, there is no discerning. You are both experiencing that emotion together, you and this fictional character that you are representing.
Yeah, and it's... And given that for me, this might be a little bit TMI for some of you, but... So, I've expressed it before, but I'm demisexual. So for me, I don't really have a desire without an emotional connection, and so sometimes that in role-playing, that can just create some really uncomfortable situations.
It can, for sure. So, there's lots of media out there for y'all to latch on to. We're really kind of getting a nice little renaissance of queer rep. Long overdue. But even as you look around and you embrace everything that's coming out, or decry that which rightfully needs to be decried, because we're also getting some media out there that's still dropping the ball. 2022, and we still got some people dropping the ball on queer rep. It baffles and boggles, but it's happening. But as you are looking back on everything, I would like everybody to do me a favor. First of all, if you're queer and you're listening to this, celebrate the fact that you're queer. Even if you can't be out, or you don't want to be out, when you're alone, when it's just you, celebrate it. Because that's you. And you deserve to celebrate yourself. And the other thing I want you to do, and this is for everybody in general, while you're embracing this media now, I want you to take a look at it and just step aside for a moment and ponder what media like this is going to look like in 10, 20 years. How do you think it's going to hold up? And the reason I'm asking you to do that is because I want you to embrace it now, but I also want you to be ready to embrace for whatever comes next.
And hold it to the expectations that we are going to continue to grow.
Exactly.
Now, there's one other media type I want to just touch on very briefly here. And that's partially because of the medium that we are presenting this in. And obviously, Grimm and I are both queer. We're very open about it. But is this really a queer podcast?
It's a queer-run podcast.
But we aren't... We don't...
We're not... We don't... This is the only real queer topic we've covered up to this point. We're mostly doing it for Pride Month. If a piece of media we review or whatever has queer representation in it, we will make a comment on it. But our focus isn't on queer media.
But that being said, there are tons of amazing queer podcasts out there, including some great queer audio dramas. One that comes to my mind right off the top is...
And then nothing came to his head.
Okay, I'm blanking on this. I might have the name wrong. I will link it in the show notes whether I've got it right or wrong. But I believe it's Once Upon a Wasteland. It is a queer Fallout fanfiction audio drama.
Absolutely. Like, there's audio dramas, there's media review podcasts, there's other podcasts that talk about other elements of being queer.
Yeah, and also, of course, we could spend hours upon hours just talking about other great queer media. Because, there's tons of comics, there's novels, there's so much out there. In fact, I will probably be reviewing DC Pride this month as well, because I went ahead and picked that up.
Yeah, and you got the correct cover, too.
I actually really wish I could have gotten the foil version of that cover, but that was $50 instead of $10.
Nerd.
Not just nerd, queer nerd. I admit I mostly bought that because I wanted to read... I totally blanked on his name.
You wanted to read Batman's story.
Yeah, the
true Batman, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, I wanted to read Kevin Conroy's story because it's...
It's a crime that it took me until this year to learn that he's gay. A crime. He's the number one Batman.
Well, and part of that is... Kevin Conroy is an elder gay. He's what, in his late 40s, early 50s now?
Something like that, yeah.
And
you just didn't talk about it openly.
Yeah, he came out, I think like 2016, I think it was. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like, he wasn't like, oh my god, hey, look at me, I'm gay. It just kind of was a casual thing in an interview.
Unlike another celebrity we could both name, cough, cough. But we won't.
Oh, there are so many who've pulled that crap.
But we could. But we won't.
And, to the point where there were a lot of people who were like, oh no, Kevin Conroy can't be gay. He'd be like all over the place about it. It's like, no. For his generation, that tended to be something that was a lot more private.
Yeah.
And especially because... he's someone who lived through the AIDS epidemic. And that's part of what his story in DC Pride is about.
Yeah. As we said, we could talk about this all night. Hours upon hours upon hours. So, go out there. Consume media. Consume queer media. And as you do, just be mindful of where we came from, where we are, and most importantly, where we still have to go.
And if you're a content creator, go there. Push the boundaries.
Make it gay.
And also, we've talked so heavily about characters being transgender or gay or bi or lesbian, but there's non-binary, there's people who are on the ace spectrum, there's people who have no sexual interest at all, and that is just as valid and belongs in Pride just as much.
Solidarity with all the Arrow Aces. We see you.
And also, just a kind of closing thought on all of this, if you are queer but in a het or het passing relationship, you're still queer and you're still valid, and your relationship is valid.
So as we close out here, there's one last thing I just want to say. Don't forget to love each other. Sorry, Critical Role. That's it for this week. If you like what we do, please give us a like, follow, rating, all that nonsense on your favorite podcatcher.
You can also support us on Patreon for special bonus content and episodes a week early, or tip us on Ko-fi. You can find those and our social media platforms and Discord server in the show notes.
And also be sure to give our friends some love.
Let's see, this week it's probably going to be I Am A Sophisticate, and So Can You, which, like I said, it's a really weird name. I don't know if they're going to give us a promo or not. If they don't give us a promo, I'm going to have to find another one. I need to nag them again. But they are another queer-hosted podcast.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm a Sophisticate, and so can you.
Is the name of our podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony.
And I'm another of your hosts, Sydney.
And we're two queer millennials with ADHD.
Who have been lying about our own cultural literacy.
If you've ever been in a situation where you pretended to know more than you do about an important movie or a piece of literature.
Yeah, or like a super cool band.
Then this is the show for you.
This is a show where we engage with the canon so that you don't have to.
Topics for discussion will include such things as:
is Carrie Brownstein the coolest person?
Can anyone who likes the movie Chinatown be trusted?
Why, Tom Waits, why?
All of these questions and more will be answered on every episode of I'm a Sophisticate, and So Can You.
Available wherever you find your podcast.
Last, but certainly not least, we want to give a quick shout out to our supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi. Especially these idiots.
Random Warrior and Rain.